All right, guys, Job chapter 1. Job chapter 1. You guys like the book of Job? No. Is it? Awesome. Well, we're going to be all over in the scripture, and we'll get to this in a few. You know, of course, for some time we've been on the topic of spiritual warfare. I mean, this has been months and months and months and months, and I don't know, maybe even close to a year at this point, but we're getting there, kind of getting to the end, and we've been talking. Last week we talked about demons, and I hope it's been a blessing to you guys. But we're going to start tonight moving to a new area of spiritual warfare, but we're going to talk about the defeat of Satan. And I'm going to talk about it in four different areas, but we're going to just take one point at a time. But there's going to be like four sub points for tonight. But I would kind of start this way. I had seen this on a sitcom, and I can't recall exactly which one. I'm not a big TV, I would rather watch a movie than like a series of TV shows. But I seen this on a TV show, and it was about this. It was in this one part of the show. It was about the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl is about to be played. And this guy, he cannot. He has something he has to do. He has to work, or he has something he has to do, so he can't watch the Super Bowl. So he decides he's going to record it on DVR. But his thing was that he did not want to know the outcome of the game before it was over. So what he did is he said, okay, I'm recording it. I'm going to work, going to do my thing, but I'm going to avoid anybody, TVs, anybody that's going to talk about it so that I don't find out what the heck the score is to this game before I get home. So he puts it on record. He goes. He stays away from everybody that he can. He drives all the way home. He gets back to the house. He sits down in the house. Just as he plops down the house, his buddy comes barging in the house and is like, can you believe that? They pulled it out and tells the name of the team that wins it in the last seconds, right? And this guy then sinks in his chair and he's defeated because he's like, I waited all day, and avoided everything, and then you ruin this moment. It's not a lot of fun watching a football game when you already know the final score. That's boring. That's terrible. But that's exactly the way that we ought to approach Satan, because we already know the outcome. We already know the end result with Satan and the demons. So when we talk about that, we have to know that we already win. I've been on this kick big time of listening to Billy Graham. I sure like him years ago than I did towards the end of his life preaching. But Billy Graham said this yesterday morning. So the minute I started listening to it, I called Rob. I was like, dude, this is amazing. But he didn't answer. So I just said that to him. He didn't know it. He called me back later, and then I forgot to tell him. But Billy Graham said this. He said, people of God should never lose a spiritual war. He goes, never. And he goes, because one, they've already won. We've already beat the devil and the demons through the blood of Jesus Christ. And he said, and secondly, you should never lose a spiritual war because you have everything offensively and defensively to win the battle. Right? So when we think about this, Satan, he was defeated the instant that he rebelled against God. Right, but that means that he is a loser. He has lost. He lost at his little game of rebellion, and someday he's going to have an eternal defeat at the hands of Christ that will put him away forever. And there was four ways. Like I said, I'm going to share one tonight. I'm going to start with this: is that Satan was defeated strategically, and I'm going to talk tonight about this. I want to talk about ways that God uses Satan's strategy against him. He used his own strategy against him. And the first way he does that is creature versus creator. All right, and so I was thinking about an analogy for this. Is like you make a mistake when you rise up against your creator. When you rise up with the one who made you, there's your first mistake. But I thought about it like this because, as you guys know, I'm in love with my dog right now. And more and more, I'm telling you, I love him more every day. And here's the thing, because he's getting easier to work with. He's getting so easy to work with. And I mean, no messes on the floor. I mean, it's just becoming easy. But, and it's true. I mean, he's not attacking anymore like he was. He's not attacking people like he was. It's amazing. And so I'm telling you, and this is true, you've even said that yourself, that he is not attacking as much. He's a puppy. He's a puppy. All right. All right. So I'm not getting in this conversation, you guys. Jason, amen. All right. We love our dogs. All right. But my point is this. In my house, there's one dog. His name is Mimo, right? In a Smith home. And here's the thing about him is this dog, is that he would be foolish, listen to this, to rebel against me. Now, I'm serious, and this is the truth. If he acts out and I stand up, he makes me feel so powerful because he puts his head down and he'll be like, he does not mess with me. Like I'm telling you, he doesn't. He doesn't bite me. He does all this stuff they're saying. I've never seen it. He's like a well-behaved child when I'm around. And this is a true story. And I'm serious. So he'll be messing with the kids. I'll just stand up and they go, he's scared of you. And I go, because I'm his master. Lots of times I stand up in front of Deanna. And yes, and then I do as she tells me. But anyway, this dog, listen, see, I'm the one I'm the one, listen, but this is why. Listen, I'm the one who puts the food in his bowl. And I just want you to hear what I'm saying. This is like an illustration. We joke and play about this is an illustration. Mimo would be silly to rebel against me because I'm the one who feeds him. I'm the one who puts water in his bowl. So without me, he doesn't have anything. You see, that's what Satan did to the Lord. You know, he rebelled against the one who controls everything. Right? And so again, my dog would be a fool to rebel, but Satan was even more foolish to rebel against God. But what he does as part of the strategy is because he knows he can't win, because he knows he's already defeated, because he knows that he went against the Creator and he can't win that battle, he uses like illusions. So what he does is, even though the devil's defeated, he can work this optical illusion against us to get us to think he's bigger and more powerful than he really is. And so when we're in the middle of a spiritual warfare, remember this. And here's what I mean by that. Pretend for a minute, right, like that it's okay to look directly into the sun. You're outside and just start staring at it. Right, probably not the smartest thing you could do. Don't try it. But, you're looking at the sun, and they say that it's 865,000 miles in diameter. You ever think about that? Think about our Creator. But you know what you could do is you could take a quarter, right? You could put it up to your eye and block the sun. And you know what the devil tries to do is this. He tries to get us focused on the quarter rather than the sun. That's what he does. He wants us to focus on his quarter-sized power rather than the power of God. And I like what Billy Graham said. I mean, I'm like, that's so true. It's like, why do we ever let the devil get us? Why do we ever let him make us feel defeated? Why do we ever let him steal our joy? Why do we ever do that? Why? Because we get in the flesh. Because we think the enemy or the problem is bigger than who Jesus Christ is. That's the truth. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, if you're ever losing a spiritual war, it's because your perspective is wrong. It's because my perspective is wrong. It's because we're looking at the wrong person, the wrong thing. We're not focused on the things of God. We have a bigger view of Satan than we ought to. Right? And that keeps us defeated. But I want to show you something else. And this is kind of like, I feel like a theological mess. And this is where we're going to get into Job in a second. But where he used his own strategy against him, I think in the greatest way, is this. That God gets glory through Satan battling against us. Now hear this through, because I want you to pay, you're going to have to probably pay close attention to this, but God has his own sovereign reasons of why he simply didn't, just destroy Satan. A lot of people fight this because they go, well, why would God allow this? Or why would God allow that? Or why does God let bad things happen to good people? But God has his purpose. We just have to trust that he has a sovereign purpose in everything that he does. Now, why didn't he just defeat him? Instead, what he does is God turns Satan's rebellion against him in a way that would bring God even more glory. In other words, God is using Satan's rebellion and defeat to display his great glory and accomplish his plan. He's using his own stuff against him. And you might, again, need to think about this for a few minutes, but I want to give you like some real life illustrations in the book of Job. See, God invited Satan. Now think about this when you're in a spiritual war. If you're a Christian tonight, number one, there are times that God invites Satan to deal with you. And see, that for me is sometimes even hard to wrap my mind around. And I don't like to admit this, but has anyone else ever been in a place where you get angry with God because Satan's sifting you? And you question God. And I'm telling you, I'm saying this honest to goodness, I've had debates with God about this. I've yelled at the Lord. I verbally have out loud spoke to God. And it wasn't prayer, it was communication saying this. I preach. I tell people this all the time. Like, I give God my resume of why he shouldn't let me be sifted. We've tithed since we were 18 years old. We have never missed. We go to church faithfully. We preach your word faithfully. Why do you sift me? I mean, like as if I don't deserve it because of my resume. And that's really not the way it works. Because the reality is the more we do for God, we know the more the devil's going to attack. But the fact, I want you to get this in your head, the fact is that if you're ever attacked, if you're really born again, God had to give permission first. He had to say, go ahead, you can take him, go ahead, you can take her. So I want you to think about this because God invited Satan to consider his faithful servant Job. And Satan wanted to put Job's faith to the test, but again, he had to get God's permission. And never forget that Satan cannot bring anything into your life that God hasn't reviewed and permitted. Never forget who's in control here. Right? So the first 2 chapters of the book of Job show that God took Satan up on the proposal to test Job. And God knew that Job would hold firm and honor him despite severe testing. And in doing so, listen to this, Job's life brought God more glory than it would have brought if Satan had never tested him. Now, that's a scary thought. That's what I put in my notes. Like, what a scary thought. That God may say, hey, consider my servant Jason. Consider, my servant, Fred. I mean, consider Rob, or consider Dale, or consider Jody, or just consider Deanna. I mean, consider them. I mean, and this is why. Because number one, I know they're not going to turn on me. What a huge feat. So he strategically beats the devil by using his own ways against him, because he gets greater glory when we can go through things still honoring God, still praising God. And I really think that this is like heavy issues of theology in this, but in Job's case, especially when his children are taken, and you start, boy, that's a different world when you start thinking about this kind of thing. But God will permit Satan to test us, and if and when that happens, when we look at the devil and what he's trying to do instead of what God is trying to do, then again, we let the quarter block the sun. It's not always easy to keep your focus on God, but when you're ready for that kind of declaration that Job made, you're ready to allow God to use Satan's work against him. Now watch this in Job, all right? Let's go to chapter 1. Job chapter 1, and go to verse 21. And we're going to move several times here quickly. By the middle of the book of Job, he's already being afflicted. It's like the guy didn't get any other life, right? And watch what happens the second he gets afflicted, verse 20 and 21. It says, then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshiped. The second trouble came, the second Satan began to attack, he worshiped God. The greatest place to be in. And he said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And I want you to keep focus on these verses, that everything Job does, every time that Satan begins to attack, he's always talking about God. His focus is on God. His focus is never on the problem. His focus is never on the burden. His focus is never on the attack. He never gives Satan one lick of glory. He just says this, God has the right to give and take away. But let's think about what would our story be in 20 and 21. I think about how that would be written about me if it's Mike 1, verse 20. And I don't know that it would say that Mike said, did he shave his head? Yes, check mark. Right? Does he fall on the ground and worship the second that Satan attacks so that God can receive glory? Nope. Usually go into a pity party. That's what it'd be. Mike cries like a little sissy baby and gets into a pity party and thinks about how bad things are and gives God his resume and tells him he shouldn't have to go through this. So see, here's what I'm saying is Satan wins the battle then because I got the quarter over my eye. And then 21, and I never go naked came I always go, no, don't take it. Don't take things away. Don't do that. Don't let me hurt. I want a fluffy pillow. My pillow, by the way. Because he's a good guy. Don't take from me. And do I finish it going, well, God's good anyway. Blessed be the name. And I want you to think about that if you put yourself in that equation. If you had lost half of what Job lost. You see, what I'm saying is God, He allows things in our lives. We're going to see this as we go through this. He allows things in our lives to change us. We know that, right? Biblically. It's smart. It sounds smart theologically, but it's like, but do we allow the burdens? Do we allow the spiritual wars to really change us and give God glory for them? Does He honestly get glory out of your burden? Out of your trying? Go to Job chapter 2. Verse 10. So Satan gets permission to tempt Job further, and he keeps going on. Now his wife's at it. Verse 10 says, but he said unto her, thou speakest as one. He goes, thou speakest as one of as a foolish woman speaketh. Here was your chance, Jason. Shall we receive good? No. Shall we receive good at the... Now listen to this part. This is all focused on God. He's correcting his wife. He goes, look, we're not going to stop worshiping God just because things got tough, just because things are not what we want. He's already made this declaration about the Lord, that He's going to bless him regardless. And he goes, why is it we can receive good at the hand of God, but we think we can't receive evil at the hand of God, or we can't receive these things? He says, in all this did not Job sin with his lips. And then here's the verse that always gets me. And if you guys get a chance, you should look this song up, because I'm telling you, this is powerful. I asked Deanna when we listen to this song, I say, would you ever pray this way? Job 13. Job 13 and verse 15. I mean, even if you go up further, this whole chapter's really strong, but just look at verse 15 for a second. It says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. But I will maintain mine own ways before him. There's a song, it's by Shane and Shane, and it says this, though you slay me, if you take it all from me, if you kill me, if you take my life, I'm going to do it for your glory, and I will do it with character and honor, because you have the right to give and take away because of the first point, you're the creator. How we turn back Satan's strategy against him is to honor and worship God through the difficulty, through the war. I thought about this, man. If we can't bless God and bless the name of the Lord in the middle of a trial, then that trial's having more power over us than God wants it to have. right? He allows it that he might get more glory from our lives. Do you know, have you ever felt this way? Because I got to say this to you. You know where I find that most of my challenges are? And I feel like God's opened me to this, to complete honesty. You know what it is? It's with people. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've had this horrible life. We've had some hard things happen in our lives. I mean, when you lose somebody you love, that's a hard thing. We've been through that. When you go through some stuff, whether it be financially, we've probably all been there at some point. Like, that's hard. You know, when you go through, you know, maybe it be a divorce or maybe it be a health issue. I mean, we all face different things. My greatest battle, I've been through a ton of stuff and it's been hard. But you know, my biggest struggle, I feel like God really is, he tries me, is with people. And what I mean by that is this: it's how I handle people. You know, I was sharing this with Dale this morning. We were talking about a situation, and I said, why would we allow someone to stop us from doing, and we were talking about this particular situation. I said, why would we allow God to stop us from doing the things that we love? And like literally, this is ministry for me. I love preaching. I love ministry. And I said this recently. I'm like, but I don't feel at home in my own ministry in the school. To come to the pulpit in church and Wednesday night, I feel at home. Like, this is my people. I don't feel at home there. And it's because I've allowed people to rob me of my joy. And you see, here's the key. They can do whatever they want. I still have to choose how I respond. I still have to choose whether I'm going to have joy in the midst of it. I still have to choose if I'm going to keep just doing what I'm supposed to do regardless of what everybody else is doing. And so I feel like where God he's opening me up, like not nearly what we're dealing with here with the story of Job, but in my own world, my own life, it's like where I'm being opened up and being exposed, and where I feel like maybe God said, go ahead. He says he puts these people in your life who use you. He puts these people in your life who challenge you every day. He puts these people in your life who want to be argumentative about every little thing. He puts people in your life that you feel like have backstabbed you, and they look in your face every day, and God says, yeah, still love them. And still keep going. And let me get glory out of it. So all of our battles are different. Right? But if I can't bless him, and I'm being honest with you, I don't. I just complain about it. You ever find yourself there? Just get angry, and maybe everybody again deals with it. Maybe you're at a different place spiritually. Maybe you've got that whooped already. I don't know. But if I can't bless God in the midst of my trials, in the midst of the spiritual warfare, then the problem is that battle has more control over me than God ever intended, because he put me in the battle to get glory back out, to change me. But again, I want you to notice the subject of Job's statements. He's focusing on God, not the devil. And God is the subject all the way through the book of Job. The issue in Job's trial was not what Satan did, it's what God could do. That's what his focus was. Go to the book of Luke. In chapter 22. Luke 22. So one area we see it is when he just says, go ahead, take them. Try them. And I'm still going to get glory out. I'm going to strategically use your method against you. Here's another thing he does. If you watch this, he used Satan's intentions to bring about the purpose and glory in the life of Peter when he was being real proud, full of pride, and he hates pride. I really believe this more than any other sin, because it reminds him of the devil's rebellion. So he had to deal with the pride in Peter's heart. So just before Jesus' crucifixion, the Lord stunned Peter by telling him this. Watch this, verse 31 and 32. It says, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you. Do you see what I'm getting at? It's like he's like, hey, have you considered my servant Job? Do you ever think about this? What an honor. Like, maybe it's not. But that he would even use your name. And he says, hey, I want to let you know, Peter, before anything else happens, that the devil's came to me. Remember again, he has to get permission. He goes, he's came to me, and he wants to sift you as wheat. And no one's reaction to that is this: oh, can we please? But watch this. But I have prayed for thee, right? That thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brother. In other words, take the thing that I'm going to, he asked me, and I'm going to give you up, and I'm the one praying. So in the midst of all that we're going through, the Lord is interceding for us. He says, but listen to this. Sometimes the things I go through are so that I can change someone else's life too. And I use this all the time. I say this: never hide your failures. Never hide your battles. It doesn't mean we need to run around, air our dirty laundry, but it's like this. If I never talked about the death of my dad, why do I talk about it? Because someone else may be facing it. Why do I go, oh, it's no secret, we've been married 26 years. If you didn't know this before, we had marriage problems before. And the hope that I'm hoping when I expose myself is this: that you've probably had marriage problems if you've ever been married longer than 2 hours. And if I can just get real about my marriage a little bit, maybe it would change somebody's life. So then here's the deal. Maybe God saves a marriage out of the stuff I've been through, and God gets glory because Satan sifted me, but it got turned against him because it saved somebody else. It converted, it changed somebody else's life. So notice the first thing that Satan again had to do was get permission. God grants him that permission, but because Peter was proud, it needed to be humbled. So Satan went right to work. He first tempts Peter to brag about his faithfulness in response to Jesus' declaration down in verse 33. And he says this, watch this. So he says, can I sift you? Yeah. And I'm praying your faith holds up and you can convert and strengthen other people. And he said unto him, Lord, I'm ready to go with thee both into prison and to death. And that sounds good, doesn't it? Brother Dev always brings up, he does this just before I preach all the time, I feel like. And he says to me, and he asked me, we have good talks, and he asked me a serious question. He said, do you think you're sold out to God? He walks up to me before class. I'm the pastor of this church. He said, you think you're sold out to God? And I said, you know, the answer to that is who could ever say they're sold? If you say you're sold out, you're proud. You miss where you're at if you think you're sold out. But how many Christians say that? I'm sold out to Jesus. What's sold out? Define that for me. That means you've surrendered everything. And let me tell you something. No one's probably surrendered it all. That's the goal, is to be sold out. He goes, well, I got to be honest. I'm not sold out. But Peter thought he had it. Think about this. I'm going to sift you. Don't worry about it. I'll go to death with you. It ain't nothing. You are a psycho. Like, what are you thinking? And the only thing that kept Peter from falling, when you understand the story, is that the fact that Jesus was praying for him. I want to ask this question. You can respond or don't respond. But do you ever feel like Satan and his demons are making your life miserable? And if they are, the question I think that you and I have to ask is this: God, why did you give Satan permission to sift me? Because that's where you're going to find the answer. You're not going to find the answer in pouting about it. You're not going to find the answer in whining. You're not going to find the answer in doubting God. You're going to find the answer in going, what's your reasoning? Like because if you really trust him, you don't even necessarily need to know how or why. You just need to know, where are you trying to take me? What are you trying to do? And I'm going to tell you this, and I say this with all sincerity. Going through some of the stuff, if you've been around our church any time, you know some of the battles we've had in the past 5 years. And let me say this to you. The thing that I appreciate the most about the stuff I went through, I don't like it. I don't want it. I have to rationalize that God allowed this, and that bothers me in some respect. But what I have to realize is this, is I'm going to tell you this. It made me a much more compassionate person. It made me much more merciful and gracious to people. So I do praise God for that. I'm not saying I like it, but I wouldn't take it back either in the same respect, because it made me a better pastor. It really, legitimately did. It made me a better pastor. But if we never look for how God can get glory out of it and why I'm going through what I'm going through, then Satan wins, because he just keeps you miserable. God gave Satan permission to test Peter severely because he knew when Peter turned around and he repented, he was going to be a great minister on behalf of God, and he was. So does that mean that we invite Satan sifting? No, don't ever do that. But the moment that you say that'll never happen to me is when God's going to give permission for it to happen to you. Because your pride is in the way. And I'm spending a lot of extra time on this issue because it's important. But remember, we're talking about Satan's defeat here, not his victory. Satan doesn't have any ultimate strategic advantage over you because he's already been beaten strategically. Turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12. See, God not only defeated Satan, he turned Satan's strategy against him. That's what we're talking about. The only thing the devil knows how to do is get us to do what he did. And that's this. Listen, and I want you to hear this clearly. Please listen to this. If he can get you to rebel or reject the things of God, he's doing exactly what he wants to do. That's his greatest thing. He already lost the battle. If he can get you to rebel a little bit, he can get you a little bitter with God, he can get you a little like blaming God. That's how he wins strategically. If he cannot get those things out of you, you see, he can't win, because God cannot be outmaneuvered by the enemy. But I don't want to leave this section without pointing out this is, I think, one of the most classic cases where God uses Satan for his own purposes. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 7. He says, "Unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of revelations, there was given to me," now listen to this, watch the wording of this. He says, there was given to me. There was given to me a thorn in the flesh. Okay, Paul says that this problem, which apparently I'm assuming was some type of intense physical pain. And let me say this to you while we're on this. I absolutely 100% believe in healing. But do you realize that sometimes God chooses not to heal because you're being sifted? He could be using what you're going through, again, for someone else. Think about how you can relate to somebody in pain when you've been through pain, even physically. But this verse, I love the wording of it. He says, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh. Like that's just weird, a weird way to put it. He says, but watch this here. He says, the messenger of Satan to buffet me. So he realized it was given to him, yet he also realizes it's a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him. And Paul tells him, he says, lest I should be exalted above measure. Do you know what that means when it says, lest I should be exalted above measure? Do you know what that means? He's saying this. God allowed a thorn in my life, a physical ailment in my life, something to go on in my life that I can't get rid of, and here's why. So that I don't make myself higher than God. I don't exalt myself. I don't put myself on the throne. That's layman's terms of that verse. He's saying this. I know it's from Satan, but I know God permitted it, and it's given to me as a gift in some respects so that I don't put myself on the throne. To keep me from exalting myself. See, but I noticed this with Paul. Paul struggled with pride too. He's a proud man, and before he got saved, that pride evidently came out over into the, Christian experience. He was destructive, but then, God used it for good. Now, think about this. He really had something to be proud of because God had put him at the top of the heap of the church, and Paul had received more revelations than any other apostles. He's going to write more books and all these things, but listen, he had to be humbled before he could be all those things. But again, let me say something to you. If we don't respond right in the spiritual war with worship and glory to God, Satan wins. So then watch this. I feel like God kind of says this to Paul. He goes, you know what? I'm going to help you with your struggle of pride. I'm going to give Satan permission to bring a problem into your life that's far too big for you to handle. And then Paul said that because the trial was so great, watch this, verse 8, for this thing I besought the Lord thrice or 3 times that it might depart from me. So the minute this trial comes, he begins to pray. And if I have to hear somebody say one more time that the reason that the physical ailment isn't going away is because you just don't have faith, now I want to slap somebody. If somebody looks at my wife's face again and goes, well, the reason you have these ailments, the reason you're just not having faith, if you would just pray. Have you guys prayed over here? Listen, we've used Wesson olive oil. I mean, we've tried it all. We've done everything you can think of. We've prayed and prayed and prayed. And let me tell you something. We believe with all faith that God can use doctors, that he can just ultimately heal her. But we've really come to this conclusion that God's trying to use it for somebody else's glory. That's what we really believe. Because we've tried all those things and we believe we've done it in faith. And you can say, well, I didn't do it in faith. She has. I believe that. See, he says, well, I prayed 3 times that this thing would go away. It's not like he liked what he was going through. And you've heard this before, but watch this. Verse 9. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for you. In other words, I ain't taking the problem away. I'm just going to give you grace in the problem. And we're going to use this problem to bring more glory to God. You're going to be used for greater things, but you have to go through the problem first to get to the greater things. He says, for my strength is made perfect. In other words, just go ahead and be weak because I'm going to be your strength now. For the first time in your life, Paul, you're going to learn to lean on me. And sometimes God gives us things that we absolutely cannot handle because we're so arrogant that we have to be humbled enough and broken enough to go, okay, God, finally I surrender. Then watch the ending of this verse, verse 9. He says, most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities than the power of Christ may rest upon me. I'd rather boast about my weaknesses, this is what this verse means, that the power of Christ may dwell within me. I'd rather be weak if that means the power of God is on me. And if Paul were here today, somebody would advise him to go to the meeting and get deliverance and from the thorn. But God did not want Paul delivered.